Sorry to keep you waiting. I see it's probably been a pretty long day for everybody here, and you're probably about to slip into a food coma. So I'll try to keep it a little bit lively, a little bit interesting. I do want to encourage you after this to stay for Megan's presentation about the Creative Alliance. They're one of our partners. They do amazing work with arts and community arts and other things, so it's worth waiting for just a little bit longer and you'll be done the day. So again, my name's Larry Schugam. I'm Executive Vice President for the Baltimore Curriculum Project. We're a nonprofit organization that operates neighborhood charter schools in East Baltimore, Hampstead Hill Academy, City Springs Elementary Middle School, Wolf Street Academy, and soon to be Govins Elementary in school year 15-16. But before I start talking about our mission and give our elevator speech and do all that shtick, I want to talk a little bit about love and relationships. Now, everything we've talked about today has something to do with relationships. And anybody working in teaching or public service or the nonprofit world is driven by love. Love of their community, love of the children, love of the people they're working with. Most people wouldn't do it because it's a hard job unless there was love making them passionate about what they're doing. And it's definitely not for the money, as most of us know. So, teachers, any teacher you talk with will probably say that relationships are critical. It's critical that the relationships are strong between the principals and the teachers and their colleagues, especially the teachers and their students. Now, one of the things we do at our schools to strengthen relationships and create a positive school culture is use an approach called Restorative Practices. It's not something we created. It came out of restorative justice, and we've had a lot of training and support from the International Institute for Restorative Practices in this approach. Now, we like to start our meetings off with a restorative circle or just a positive circle. We like to start our days off in the schools that way. There's too many people here to go through and let everyone's voice be heard, but I do want to ask if maybe 5 people could answer the following question or circle starter. And that question is, what's one thing that comes to mind when you hear the words Baltimore City? Any volunteers? Can I pick on you to? Sorry, so let me, if we did our exercise, let me tell you a little bit about BCP while we're waiting for the dramatic slide to come up. So the Baltimore Curriculum Project, I mentioned that we operate neighborhood charter schools. Do many people in the room know what charter schools are, what they're like in Maryland? Megan? Okay, Mr. Packer. Well, so a charter school, at least in the state of Maryland, is a school that's operated under contract by a nonprofit organization. And it gives the nonprofit organization and the school more autonomy in terms of the program they're going to implement, curriculum development, other types of training. If you don't have that autonomy, you're kind of at the discretion of the central office to make whatever changes they want. So one year it could be a research-based curriculum like direct instruction, which we use, and the next year it could be comic books are the way to teach every kid literacy, and that is something that they brought in a few years ago and ushered out fairly quickly. So let me, I'm sorry? Okay, I'll just keep going. Okay, so I'll pretend these are the slides. What you would see up there on the splash screen is The Wire. How many people have heard of the show The Wire? It's kind of like The Corner. Okay, not a lot of people from outside. The Wire is a show about drugs and violence, crime, helplessness, hopelessness, everything bad that you hope people don't think of when they think of Baltimore City.
Except it's really well made.
Except it's
brilliant television.
Yes.
Made in Baltimore City.
So it's worth checking out, but it's worth understanding that this is only part of the picture, and I would like to say a small part of the picture of what Baltimore City really is. Now, for the first 30 years of my life, I had more or less a wire mentality. Even though my parents and my grandparents and my great-grandparents all grew up in Baltimore City, my great-grandpa came from Russia and moved here and was a furrier and then ended up creating a factory in downtown Baltimore and West Baltimore. On my other side, my great-grandma came from Lithuania and they had a corner grocer. My parents were deeply embedded in Baltimore City, but when they moved to the county, the cord was cut. My relationship with Baltimore City was severed. And that's a big problem we have from the granular level when we're working with community development and working with schools and children and not having and building that relationship to the level of international cultural diplomacy. Unless we take time to build those relationships, consistent communication, things we heard about today, going to the people, whether it's going to the neighborhood instead of just looking at maps and data, or it's traveling abroad to put on a jazz concert for people in Germany or wherever. It's building those relationships that's really critical for... Okay, I don't know. It was working okay at home, but that's okay. We'll just do without it. I can even hold up my iPad if I need to. So I'll just have to make this, paint a visual picture. So what I want to really emphasize today is that Baltimore City is much more than the wire or the corner or sort of a scary, like it was for me when I was a child, sort of a scary, far-off magical place that had neat things like the harbor and the science center and the aquarium, and you would kind of come from point A at your home in the county to point B and then back to point A again. You wouldn't really explore. That's very much sort of a suburban, cloistered perspective that I grew up with. I grew up in Pikesville, which was 99% Jewish. You know, I thought that 99% of the world was Jewish, you know, growing up. That's how, you know, sequestered we were. So the past 10 years has been a real eye-opener for me. I've been working for the Baltimore Curriculum Project. I've been in East Baltimore. I've gotten to know people. I've gotten to know the kids. I've been throughout the neighborhoods where I would have been afraid to drive through because people in the county would say, oh, don't drive through there. They'll shoot you through your window. And you get, now, you know, granted, there is somebody I know who did turn down the wrong alley, and there was something happening that should have been, and he did get shot. But that's one out of, you know, a million. So, but I have never had that problem, you know. So maybe I'm not making a good case at this moment. But the point is, you know, the streets that I was afraid to drive down in the past, I'm walking in, I'm seeing more than what's on the surface. You know, if you drive through some of our school neighborhoods, you're going to see dilapidated buildings. You may see people doing a deal on the corner. You may see people out of work, milling around, what have you. But if you go inside, if you take the time to go inside the buildings or talk to some of the people, you see that there's so much beauty, so much vibrancy, so much energy, so much positivity happening behind, you know, so many of these doors, so many of these buildings. If you go into the church near Collington Square School when they're doing their closing ceremony for the 8th graders from Collington Square, people are singing, people are dressed to the nines, they're proud of their kids, and they're excited for them to go on and succeed in high school. If you go into our schools, I remember one anecdote. We had somebody from Maryland State Department of Education visiting City Springs Elementary Middle School. Now the neighborhood is right next to Perkins Homes Public Housing, which is a strong community. It's still public housing. It doesn't look very welcoming. It's what you would expect from institutional housing. Now, the person from MSDE was sitting there with the principal talking about the school, and there's monitors so that the principal can see all the hallways and what's going on. And the person from MSDE said, they had the strange look on her face. And Principal Riquetta said, what is it? And she said, where are all the kids? She said, they're in class learning. And she said, what? So they got up and they went from class to class. And lo and behold, imagine this, in a school, a public school in Baltimore City, kids were in class learning. They were engaged, they were attentive, and they were doing what they were supposed to be doing. The person at MSD so much expected kids to be running the halls and going to the bathroom and having problems that it just blew her mind. But I'm here to say that that's happening in schools all over Baltimore City. I mean, every day I hear somebody say, schools are a mess, I'm not going to live in the city, I'm not going to move to the city, and there are challenges, and some schools struggle more than other schools. But there's so much going on, but you have to take the time to make that relationship and go in and see what's going on and talk with the people. And I would say that that relationship is what engenders and breeds love, and it's the love that drives us to do the work that we all do when in public service and nonprofit work, but also what we specifically do at the Baltimore Curriculum Project. So I should be mindful of the time. I don't have the slides to keep me going, but I have some beautiful slides of kids, and I can put this up on the web so everybody can see the wonderful things that are going on. Dave, how long do you want me to, when do you want me to stop? Because I got a little mixed up on the time.
It's up to you. We say 20 minutes and then 10 minutes for discussion.
So, okay, another 10 minutes to talk, or 5 minutes? I'll try to keep it brief. Okay, so thank you. Don't say whatever I want because I will talk for the next 3 hours. But what I talked a little bit about making those relationships, you know, a lot of what I see when I'm in various work groups and different organizations is that people want to take a look at the data, they want to take a look at the maps, then they want to put the data on the maps and the maps on the data. They want to figure out, okay, this is what the problem is, and let's go do it. And they'll get a big grant, and they'll do a pilot program for 3 years, and they'll show up at our doorstep at one of our schools and say, we're going to do X. And I'll say, well, didn't you know that we already have an attendance program that's doing X, and we have a social worker there that's been working here full-time for 4 years doing X, and we'd love to have you do X as well because we need more support. But they never took the time to ask the principal, because why would a principal at a struggling school that isn't making, state test standards be doing anything to address the challenges in their school? Well, obviously there's lots going on, but when all you look at is the test score and you say a school's a failing school, it's really easy from 1,000 feet up, 10,000 feet up to think that nothing good is happening, and that the kids aren't trying, and that the parents aren't supportive, and that the teachers aren't working hard, and that the principals aren't working hard. But they really are, most of the time. We had another interaction with Maryland State Department, I wasn't going to say Maryland State Department of Education, but I let the cat out of the bag. They came to us one time for a site visit, and they said, your test scores are too low, you need to get them up, so focus on the bubble kids. Does anybody know what a bubble kid is? It's not like a kid in a bubble that needs a protected environment. It's a kid that is almost passing the state test, but not quite there. So with just a little bit of investment, you can probably get them to pass that state test, and your average is going to go up, and then, No Child Left Behind is going out, but whatever comes in next with the park and the Common Core, it allows you to make those standards so everybody can keep their job and you keep on trucking. Unfortunately, they were saying, focus resources on the bubble kids, don't worry so much about the kids that are really, really far below that standard, because you only have so much time and resources. Well, we can't do that at Baltimore Curriculum Project. You can't do that if you have a relationship with the kids in your school. You're not going to write off, 50, 100, 200 of your kids so you can make the average. So we took their advice and said, thank you, but no thank you, and we continue to do what we're doing. So a little bit about what we do specifically. So as I said, we run charter schools, but we run neighborhood conversion charter schools. It's a little different than most schools where across the country there are tons of charters popping up every day. Usually it's sort of like a magnet school. You have to go through a lottery process to get into the school, which is wonderful for the kids that get in. But the kids that don't get in, there's a movie called Waiting for Superman, some of you may have seen, they're heartbroken. And we believe that every school should be a school of choice. And granted, that's easy to say, not as easily done. But we were founded in '96 to provide any interested city school with curriculum development, teacher training, and management support. So we've always been about helping as many city schools, meeting them where they are and helping them to improve and get to the next level. And we do that with our charter schools too, because we work with existing schools and convert them into charters. Any child living in the neighborhood can just go in and sign up like they would any traditional public school. So everyone in the neighborhood benefits that way. And we don't do hostile takeovers. We don't say, give us a school, we're coming in, we're firing all the staff, we're firing all the teachers. And too often that's what happens, going back to the relationship thing. That's a lot of people that don't have that relationship and know the community or the school or the children. They want to just come into a neighborhood, and to revitalize it, they tear it down. They move the people out, they tear down the buildings, and they put up shiny new buildings and bring in shiny new people. Same thing with schools. A school's failing, it's a lost cause. We're going to fire the teachers, the principal, bring in shiny new principals, shiny new teachers. And with kids, now you can't usually just get rid of the kid, but some teachers will say they're a lost cause, and they get socially promoted, and they graduate high school, and they can't even read. Now, we ensure that we don't do that in our schools, and I would like to say and guess that most schools and most teachers, 99%, don't look at it that way. Now, there are some schools, charters, that might coach a challenging student out, because we know that because students from our schools, neighborhood schools that have gone to a charter nearby, have come back to us sometimes because they were told, this isn't a good fit for you. Well, we don't have that option. This is their school. There's nowhere else for them to go. So we either help them and the teachers as best we can, or there is no or else. That's just how it is, and that's what we've always wanted to do. So breaking down our model a little bit, I'm going to just touch on a few of the approaches we use to educate our students, support our teachers, and our administrators. And I'm just going to run through this quick because a lot of it's sort of education, policy wonkish type stuff, and I don't know how many people here are in education or or interested in education. Okay, 25% maybe, so I won't bore everybody with this stuff. One of the pieces we use in our schools is called direct instruction. It's a research-based language arts and math curriculum that's been around for 40 plus years. It's scripted, so much like an actor, the teacher can focus on preparing and delivering their script with enthusiasm and engaging the audience, instead of spending hours and hours every night writing lesson plans and reinventing the wheel over and over again. Now, this isn't all we do for language arts. This is just one part of the day. We use it for math in one of our schools, not the other two. We use Singapore math in one of our schools, and then the Baltimore City curriculum in the other. Direct instruction, something our founder said one time when she was first looking into curricula and researching all around the country in the late 90s. And she went to visit a school that had direct instruction or DI, and she had never seen it in action, never heard about it, didn't know much about it. She said the school environment was so positive and so quiet because kids, curriculum isn't going to solve everything. But if you have a structured curriculum that's working and kids are learning and they feel good about themselves and they're achieving, it's going to diminish behavior management problems to some degree. So the only sort of outburst she saw was kids coming up to her and saying, tugging on her coattail and saying, hey lady, can I read this to you? Can I read this text to you? And that was the only uproar she heard. So direct instruction became one of the things we brought to Baltimore City. Another model we use is for classroom management. It's called CHAMPS, and CHAMPS stands for Conversation, Help, Ask, Movement, Participation, and S for Success. So if this was a really rowdy crowd here, which you aren't, I would champ this talk. I would explain to everybody, if you want to talk, don't go back there and talk, go outside the door, if you need to use the bathroom, you don't have to, in this case, raise your hand and ask permission, just take care of it, and if you want to move around, well, hopefully everybody doesn't just get up randomly and move around. But it's a way of setting clear expectations for students so they don't break rules that they didn't even know were rules in the first place. I want to be cognizant of time. I realize I'm a talker, so I could just keep going and going. A couple other things I'll just hit real quick. We use core knowledge core knowledge read-alouds, which is, and I should offer this before I go on, that anybody that wants to learn more about our model, more what we do, tour our schools, anything like that, I'm more happy to talk. Well, you won't see my information up here, but I do have business cards. And I have an iPad if you really want to see the presentation when I'm done. It's on there. We use restorative practices, I mentioned. And that's a way of, like I said, building positive relationships among all the people in the school. It's also a conflict resolution model. And something I'd like to highlight about restorative practices that I find exciting is that we brought it to our schools in 2007. And it's had an amazing impact on the school culture, not just the teachers and the students, but the parents as well. So we have parents that might have come in and yelled and fumed about this kid did that to their kid, and they should be expelled and blah, blah, blah. We've had parents at City Springs Elementary Middle come in and demand a restorative conference with the mediators so that they can work out the differences between their child and this other child, and maybe the other parents will be involved. The other day, our principal said she was leaving the building, and a group of maybe 10 or 15 kids were all sitting outside the school door in a circle. And they were holding their own restorative circle because two of the children had had some type of altercation or disagreement, and the kids were working it out themselves among them. And mind you, this is middle schoolers. And I don't know if any of you have middle schoolers, but I have a 9-year-old, and he's not there yet, but I would love to see, he doesn't work things out that way, and none of his friends do, but I'd like them to learn how. A few other things that we do offer our schools. We offer customized training and professional development. We have coaches that work in class with all of our teachers to provide support and mentoring. This is something that you don't find in most schools. And teachers that have come from other schools say to us, gosh, I wish I had had a coach when I first started teaching. When I got to whatever school I started at, it was sink or swim. They threw me into the classroom and said, good luck, close the door, I'll see you at the end of the year, more or less. I'm exaggerating a bit, but they didn't have one-on-one support to really work with them and strategize. So a couple other things I just want to mention. As I said, there's some beautiful pictures. So I'll paint a couple of these beautiful pictures, and then I'm going to conclude, and we can have any Q&A if you want. And then, again, stay for Megan. One of the beautiful pictures here is, actually, you know what? I can put them up maybe one at a time this way, because I just got to let you see it. Oh, no, it won't work. Oh, okay. Oh, if you could just put it in the regular way, and I could just have it, not pretty, but show it. Anyway, the couple of things I wanted to mention, one of the things we offer our schools is what one of our principals calls sort of our major medical insurance or emergency support plan. Things come up with our schools all the time, positive and negative. I can just click down through. So, what's that? Oh, that'll work? Oh, great, okay. So I just wanted to show you, well, I could have done this from the start now I realize, but I was too focused on getting the technology perfect. So this is Baltimore. This is Baltimore. And this is Baltimore City. Some prettier pictures for what goes on here. The last couple of slides I wanted to show you. Oh, actually. So this is our Mexican folkloric dance troupe at Wolf Street Academy, which serves about 70% Latino students, the highest percentage of Latino students in Baltimore City for any elementary school. A couple years ago, the principal asked us, he had a problem with the provider that was doing after school. He said, will you please come in and apply for this grant and run that after school program? We said, sure. We've been running it ever since, and they provide radio broadcasting, arts, instruction, academics, dance, all types of wonderful things. So in addition to our model, we're flexible in what we do for our schools because we know no school is, all schools are unique, all communities are unique, and our schools reflect our communities, especially because they're neighborhood schools. Another need came up at Govins Elementary School a few weeks ago, was broken into, and they stole $7,000 worth of merchandise, iPads, and cash from the school book fair. We put out the word to our email list. We set up a giving page on GiveCore, and within, I guess, about 5 days, we raised $10,000 to replace all of the equipment from people all over Baltimore City and in the county donating to help the school. This is our brand new, beautiful purple turf athletic field at City Springs Elementary Middle. About 7 years ago, students at that school presented the principal with a petition at the morning assembly saying we want a football field because all they had to play on was broken blacktop with glass. They had a swing set with no swings, a backboard with no basketball hoop. And it took 7 years, but because of some aligning of the stars and some good luck and good fortune, city schools put in most of the money, and we raised about $350,000 in grant money and individual donations. So those are just some brags I wanted to highlight. I do want to give a shout out, Leading Minds series. So we have been bringing speakers from all over the country to talk with education stakeholders and others in Baltimore City about various educational issues for the past 7 years. So you can go online and watch videos of any of these, K-12 math, high-stakes testing, how to prepare and evaluate teachers. Our newsletter, we also had a series for a couple years on public education around the world. And some of the speakers came from, I'm giving a shout out to World Trade Center Institute. Nina Benkovo, who spoke earlier today. They've brought about 7 or 8 groups of, or delegations of educators from all over the world to tour our schools. And it's always a two-way experience. We always learn a lot from what they have to say. We had a group from Iraq. I didn't have a picture of them, but it's been a wonderful experience, I guess you could say, in international cultural exchange and diplomacy. I did want to recognize our partners because we can't do it alone. Creative Alliance's partner with WTCI, Baltimore Internet Radio, and lots of others. So that's my spiel. Sorry it was a little up and down, without the slides it wasn't as paced, but I appreciate you for taking the time to listen to me. I hope you got something out of it. If you have any questions about anything, we do. Okay. That's a good question. A typical day, the students will come in. Usually they'll have, at City Springs, they have a morning assembly for the elementary grades and a morning assembly for the middle grades every day, where they say the school, chant, and the teacher will give shout outs to students who are excelling or teachers and just gets everybody pumped and ready for the day. Then they'll go to let's see, I don't have the whole schedule committed to memory, but they'll usually do reading and language arts. They usually have 2 periods of reading language arts and some days a double math. Then they'll go to resource most of the days. So most of our schools work really hard, despite what many people know of in terms of cuts to the arts and music and languages and other resources. Our schools work really hard to incorporate all those things into the day school, and where they can't as much as they'd like into the after school through programs like partnerships like with Creative Alliance at Hampstead Hill Academy and other outside organizations. let me think, lunch, recess is usually a component of the day, at least a few days a week. Physical education is something we've worked really hard to keep in all of our schools. And then in the middle grades, you know, the humanities, science, social studies, things like that. Does that sort of answer your question? Or?
How's that different from the public school?
Well, it's not, the schedule is not necessarily different from the public school. And a good public school run by, you know, a strong leader with strong teachers can be a great school. Worland Park Elementary Middle School is a great school. For us, it's not whether or not you're a charter or a contract school or a turnaround or a regular public school, because our charters are public schools. It's whether you have the supports you need and the right curriculum in place. So we believe that our curriculum is a curriculum that doesn't teach to the test, which sometimes in traditional public schools, it might be more focused on that. The coaching support we provide for our teachers, you're not going to find that in a traditional public school. The professional development that we offer, we customize it based on the specific needs of our teachers, because we're not providing it for several thousand teachers in a one-size-fits-all environment. We're providing it for 150 to 200 teachers based on what their principals said, my teachers need this. So we either find it or create it or bring in consultants that can train them on it. Those are some of the differences. You know, I'm not, in our schools, class sizes are smaller. And a lot of times that's just a function of funding, you know, and also decisions about where the principal's going to put their money. Some of our principals opt to hire more teachers so they have an extra paraprofessional in every class to diminish class size. So for disclaimer, I haven't seen the movie, but I've read about it. I mean, it's like on my list, but I know about the movie, and I've talked, it sounds terrible, I've talked with a lot of people who have seen it. You know, haven't done my research like I should, but in terms of sort of, you know, I mean, obviously it was, you know, very sensationalized, you know, but it is true that, you know, there are limited schools that people want to send their kids to in a lot of high poverty urban areas. Now, whether they don't want to send them to the school because it's truly not a school that will give their kids a great education, or for other reasons, that can be debated. But, you know, people are clamoring to get into charter schools, whether they're lottery schools or our conversion schools. But you will see a difference. At Hampstead Hill Academy, it's very diverse, about 30-30-30, Latino, African American, and Caucasian. And they always have a wait list of maybe 100+ kids. In 2 other schools we're working with, the neighborhoods are more homogeneous, less racial and socioeconomic diversity. And they have, but the zones, there's plenty of diversity in those zones, but people aren't necessarily choosing that school. So I think what I know of Waiting for Superman, it's fairly accurate. I don't believe that startup charters are a solution to all of the woes of our society and our public school systems. I don't think we need to replace every neighborhood school with a magnet lottery charter school.